This is the Nike Phantom GX2 Pro, the first tier takedown model in the GX lineup, and I think it fixes my two major problems with the elite level model. So, is it worth picking up the Pro instead because it fixes those issues, or losing out on things like grip knit? Is that too big of a trade-off? Welcome to Boot Wizard, I'm James. Do get subscribed, like the video, all that good stuff. The first thing I want to cover today is the price. So that is because I think that the Lunar version of this particular boot, being 10 euros more expensive, just pushes it into a realm where it's just too expensive. So this is 160 euros at full price. The Lunar 2, which is exactly the same boot, but with the collar, the same as this one here, is 170 euros. And I think for a first tier takedown, that is simply too expensive when you're looking at some other boots from some other brands that are elite level coming in at similar prices. So I would definitely stick to the GX if I were you. That's my first piece of advice. And now let's move on to the upper. The upper on the GX2 Pro is actually Flyknit, so you lose grip knit like I mentioned right at the very start, and it's Flyknit with ACC. Now this is still a very premium feeling upper, and it's very soft, it's very pliable, and it breaks in really, really nicely. I've been very, very impressed with this boot overall in terms of the upper. Now, if we're going to compare that to what we get from the elite level model, again, the GX2 and Lunar 2 are the same as each other, apart from one has a collar. The grip knit on this is really prevalent. Like, it is the key USP for this particular boot, and it genuinely makes such a big difference. So it is a big change to go from one to the other, bigger than you will find, for example, if you go from the Mercurial Elite to the Mercurial Pro. And I really do love the grip knit on this particular boot, and missing out on it here is a little disappointing, but again, you're coming in at about 110 euros less for the boot. So just looking at it from a purely, it is a much cheaper option, but is made with incredibly premium materials point of view, I still think it is very, very good. And I think it's been made really, really well. The ridges are a very welcome addition to the boot. They do just enough to give you a little bit of extra texture on the ball. Again, not as prevalent as on the elite level model, but I actually like it just being that little bit more subtle. This boot overall just has a much more natural touch and feel on the ball when compared to this very intense grip knit feeling that you're going to get from the Elite. If you ask me, I prefer the Elite here just because I absolutely adore this grip knit upper. I think it's fantastic, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. And once you've bedded it in, it does take a couple of sessions to really kind of break these in, make them nice and soft. But once you've got there, you've got a really nice football boot on your hand. Really nice natural touch. It's not too distant, it's not too padded. It's a really well balanced upper on what is pretty much a very well balanced boot. So touch and upper both get big thumbs up from me, and you should only really be considering the Elite in this area if you're dying for the grip knit, which I will admit is fantastic. Now, I mentioned at the start that I had two problems with the elite level model that the pro level model fixed. And one of those problems is with the sole plate. So let's look at the stud pattern and the sole plate on both boots here. And you see it is pretty much exactly the same, or it is exactly the same in terms of stud shape, stud pattern. It both have this Cyclone 360 boot, which I actually quite like. I know it's come in for a little bit of criticism from some corners, but I think this is actually a very nice sole plate, so I'm not complaining at all. On the elite level version, what you will find is that it is a little bit weak through this midfoot area. It doesn't have as much stability as I would like. Now, this isn't an absolute disaster or anything, and if you like a more flexible sole plate, this is going to work for you, but just for me, I would like to see a little bit more structure through this particular area and a little bit more responsiveness and spring back through the front of the boot. On the Pro level model, we get that extra bit of structure through the boot. Now you do lose a little bit of responsiveness in this forefoot area. It's not particularly springy or anything like that, but overall it is very solid. It absolutely does the job. It's nice and stable. And again, for a pro tier takedown of the Elite, there are areas here where quite simply it's just better. As I say, totally personal preference as to whether you like this particular sole plate and stud pattern. I quite do. I can recommend it. I don't recommend it for an AG pitch for pretty much everybody, just from purely safety reasons. Bladed studs on AG pitches are not a good idea, but I'm a madman. I've used it on AG pitches many times and I actually quite like it for an AG pitch. Kind of works for me. But in a classic, WWE fashion, don't try this at home. So if the outsole is one of the things it fixes, what is the other? Well, that comes down to the fit. So let's start by simply talking about the sizing. In terms of sizing, buy your normal Nike size, the size you have in the Elite, whatever you've bought in a Nike boot recently. I have them in a US 8, I have the Elites in US 8, I have everything Nike of recent times in a US 8. Go with your normal Nike size. In terms of width, this is where it gets interesting because you do still have a reasonable amount of width through the boot. So if you have a slightly wider foot, I don't see you having a problem wearing these even with the one-piece upper. Although I would possibly be tempted to guide you towards the Vapor. The Vapor Pro might be a little bit wider, or at least the upper is a little bit softer, more malleable and more likely to accommodate a wider foot. Either way, not a bad shout. But the best thing about this boot is it's built on a different last, or it feels like it is, because the way the material is done differently, the different structure of the material gives the boot a more sculpted shape overall, which means that this area under the arch here, where I had a bit of extra material, a bit of extra room, some dead space on the Elite level boot, particularly here, this is one of the only things I complained about with this boot. I think it's fantastic, but that little bit of dead space really kind of irked me. It's not there on the Pro. The shape on the Pro is really, really nice, and not having that dead space under the arch is great. Now, it does again come at that trade-off of not having this super soft grip knit upper, but this broken in is still really, really nice. And that extra structure through the boot does give it a bit more lateral stability as well, and no dead space is always a win. So I would definitely consider trying these on and seeing how your foot shape works with the shape of this particular boot, because if you don't have a wide foot, you probably want to try these on, to be honest. If you do have a wide foot and you're just looking for the best option for a wide foot, still go and get the Elite. This is a phenomenal Nike option for people with wide feet. But shape on this, man, A+, big fan. That leads us nicely into lockdown, the whole overall shape of the boot just being a little less voluminous, having less dead space, just leads to a feeling of having more lockdown. The lacing system is nice and deep, even if it is pushed across to the side to give you that big striking surface, and I think that is completely fine. You still get good lockdown here. This isn't market leading, it's not mind-blowing lockdown, but you know what, for a first tier pro level takedown, the lockdown here is perfectly adequate, and I have absolutely no problems with it. So if you're just looking for something that's going to do the job well and you're not going to have to worry about it lockdown wise, this is a really good option. And I actually said this in my Vapor Pro review, which is either out or is coming out very soon. I think the lockdown in this might actually be better than what you're going to get in the Elite level model. If you do want to pick up that Vapor review or any of my other reviews before anybody else, then please consider becoming a Boot Wizard member. You can do so by hitting the links down in the top pinned comment, where you'll also find some links where you're going to be able to buy these absolutely delicious little boots, or these for that matter. It means you can get the boots, you know they're coming from a reliable, reputable source at good prices, and it also helps support the channel. We can't really talk about lockdown without talking about the heel. And the heel here is good, if a little bit wide round the sides here. So the sides do kind of flare out a little bit, where I might like them to hold their shape a little bit more. But overall, the padding is nice. You sit back into the heel quite well. I've not had any heel slippage issues, and there's absolutely no comfort issues as well. There's a nice little soft pocket in there for you to sit back into. It does have a really odd kind of bulge around this area here, but it doesn't seem to have anything to do with how the fit feels on your feet. My only other criticism would maybe be the material of the padding itself. It does feel a little bit lower quality than what you might get even from other takedown models at this particular price. It's a version of synthetic suede, but it's really not as good as what you're going to get on the elite level model, and does feel a little bit on the slick side. So if you do have a narrow heel, you might have a little bit of an issue with that flaring and the material not being particularly grippy. But overall, I don't have any issues with the heel. Comfort-wise, I think these are good. They are definitely nowhere near as comfortable as these elite level boots, which I find to be incredibly comfortable. But if you do give them a bit of time to really break them in, they can have a great shape and really mold to your feet. They're also not as comfortable as the Vapor 16 Pro, so if you are looking for the more comfortable option, maybe go for that. But I think these are a really solid choice if you're not particularly interested in getting the grip knit. If grip knit isn't something that you want, and if you don't have that wide foot, these are a really good option for most people at a price significantly cheaper than the Elites, while fixing a couple of issues that the Elites actually have. If you want to check out that Vapor 16 Pro review that I've referenced a few times, you want to click this video right here.